Happy Hanukkah and happy evening of, well, eve of Shabbat. And let me move the microphone here. And so for those of us who go by the Karaite or the biblical calendar, the first night of Hanukkah was last night. And so we're going into the second night of Hanukkah and Shabbat tonight. I didn't get to, by the way, I apologize for the microphone being so near my mouth. I think even though I look weird, I think I finally found a way to, and there we go again. Let me, for goodness sakes. Anyway, I hope you can hear me because it looks like the microphone, I can see the little volume gauge. And so I'm speaking clearly and loudly enough. And let's see, okay, I have my memory card in there. I was just feeling to make sure I had my memory card in the slot. So I do have some pictures and videos from Thanksgiving, and I'm going to be uploading those. And I know that my makeup looks weird, by the way, forgive me. I originally put the makeup on so I could also do it like this because my glasses are dirty. So you could see more clearly with you could see my eyes more clearly with the glasses. But it's kind of funny anyway because, well, not funny, but I guess the look fits because it's kind of wintry look. And I gotta bring up the research poll one more time, so forgive me. Right now, I have, let's see if there's any more votes. There were just a couple recently, and let me go back to that poll for a minute because I'm going to be posting a link anyway. And I know people are getting tired of this research poll. Believe me, I am too. It's nice to see that most people have abided by research decorum. There were a couple of people who wanted to make trouble and who were doing what they did. And I'm not going to give away anything yet, but I'm getting awfully close. Right now, I have 561 votes. Let's see, so if I'm a calculator here, 500, you know what, I'm being lazy. I can do this the easy way. Because if I need 750 votes, let's see. So 560 votes would be, I need 90 votes left. You take off 1 because you add 1 for 561 votes. So I need 89 votes left. Now, here's what I would have liked to have gotten, and I'm going to be using the calculator for another project anyway. And so if I do 1,000 minus 561, I could have easily figured it out. And because I'm not much of a mathematician anyway. So, let's see. So that would have been 440 votes that I needed. Well, 439. And let me check the number right here. 439. So, I would have liked to have gotten all 1,000 votes. But at this point, it looks like I'm going to have to get 750 votes. And so let's see. If I get 750 votes, that is halfway. This is going to sound weird and kind of like a tongue twister or what have you, and a little confusing, but so, for lack of a better term, if I get 750 votes, I have a number of votes that is halfway between half of the minimum normal curve and the minimum normal curve itself. So, since the minimum normal curve is 1,000, half of the minimum normal curve is 500, so 750 would be in between those two numbers, and heck, I got 75% of the votes that I wanted, but I got what I got, and I think that since the majority of people did leave comments, and in full disclosure, I did have to report some of the comments because I just had it, and I did not need people attacking me and making these accusations against me that were just not only unfair, but also totally against researchy decorum. And anyway, so at 750 votes, I'm just going to close the poll because the first assignment for the paper I got is due on December 3rd, and right now it is November 29th. So let's see, so I got from here 1, 2, 3, 4 days. And actually, if I count from the 30th, I got 1, 2, 3 days. And I'm going to have to turn the paper into her office anyway, even if she cancels class. So, and then I got a Hebrew oral interview that day, so I got things to study for. And I know people are going to say, you pushed your research pool enough. Give us a break on Hanukkah. Look, I'm trying to. And you know what? This research poll was originally fun. And what's due on... Hang on. I gotta see what's due on... Well, I could go into my Gmail. And see, you gotta love that I'm kind of, for lack of a better term, being a klutz on this. I'm being a little confusy and just bumbling all over the place. And so I gotta see what's due on certain dates. And, okay, she said, okay, so, alright, that's that. And you guys thought that I was kidding about, let's see, okay, that's, dang it. Oh, okay, the research results. Okay, so we can go this way. Let's see. Oh, here she goes. She talks about what's due. She says the research question is due. Well, I emailed that to her a long time ago. The annotated bibliographies are due. The literature reviews due. So I gotta do that. And I realized that I made it much harder on myself than it had to be. So the hypotheses and theories, the concept measurement is due on December 3rd. Okay, so the final is due December... Well, she said I will have these papers returned to you by December 5th, and the final is due on December 12th. Well, she changed it back to the 10th, so... You know, that's why I gotta collect the data as soon as possible. And, again, I know people are saying, it's Hanukkah, it's Thanksgiving, it's Thanksgiving, give us a break! And, as I said, believe me, so what I got to do here? I got the research question done, annotated bibliography is not done yet, literature review started, hypotheses and theories, pretty much done. All I gotta do is write the nulls, concept measurement is due. The good thing is the concept measurement, reliability, validity, what have you. I mean, I can, what else did she say was due? Reliability, validity, and all that. Good thing is, so the head already gives me that stuff, and I did that trial run poll back on whenever it was, and so I could do all that. And I mean, you know, people, you know, didn't really believe I was doing this for a research project. Well, I'm reading you the evidence right here. And it's kind of funny because, you know, even, like in terms of, one of the things I'm thinking about, too, is our history paper, and it was kind of, it would be hilarious if we weren't just so, well, what do you call it? It would be so, I guess it would be so hilarious if it weren't just so sad and so scary. Like they say, well, you can't impose yourself onto, like the historical records and the historical sources, and, you know, you just gotta take them for what they are. And, I mean, even one of those sources that I was reading for this creative paper I'm doing, I'm like, well, they kind of imposed themselves, and they picked up implications and all that. And, I mean, you know, even in one of the research papers that I was reading for social work, it said, you know, draw inferences and what have you from your personal experience and stuff. So it's like, and I mean, also, I mean, why else were we given logic? Why else were we given reason? Why else were we given certain things that we were given? And, I mean, also, and people say, and, you know, this is the frustration I've had with my relatives, too, sometimes. I'm like, do I need to pull you guys back in time to prove that, you know, certain things happened? And, I mean, I'm not the brightest bulb in the bunch, okay? But I'm not the dullest bulb either. And I'll tell you this much. Like I said, if reason and logic and inferring and whatever weren't meant to be used, we wouldn't have been given those gifts. And also, let me give you another example. Adam and Eve learned the hard way when they didn't infer. You know, if they were, you know, even Eve kind of inferred, and I mean, it really could have happened. So let me read you a passage just as an example. And that reminds me, I got a lot of partial readings to catch up on. And so we are going to Genesis 2 to 3. I'm just going to be safe, because I don't always remember chapter and verse. But, okay. Here we go. So it's in chapter 3. It says, Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden, and the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Well, we know that God said to Adam and Eve, going back to, let's see, okay. Alright, so it talks about it in chapter 1 then. And so Eve said, okay, you know, we're not allowed to touch it or we're going to die. And we can see in chapter 1, let's see, it says, see, I've given you every herb. And it says, see, I've given you every herb. And of course, we find out later that they weren't supposed to touch. So let's just do Genesis 1 to 3, because like I said, I'm not necessarily good with chapter and verse. There are certain things that I remember. And, I mean, this is an example of inferences. And, what is it? Okay. Okay, it says, then the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. And of course we know that God didn't tell Adam not to touch it, or it could be that God told Adam not to touch it too, but that wasn't necessarily recorded. Or it could have been that God told Eve, look, not only are you not allowed to eat it, you're not allowed to touch it either. So let me add that just in case you're wondering. And, like, I mean, we even see this in other places too, because, like, people would say, well, doesn't the Bible contradict itself, or doesn't the Bible... I mean, like, even in normal conversation, for example, you're not going to record everything right at that moment, or you're going to add things later, or... Because, for example, it even talks about, it talks about the servant, and this is the servant of Abraham, and it talks about a bride for Isaac, and it says, now Abraham was old and well advanced, and then he's talking to the servant, and we later see in the conversation with oh darn it, we later see in the conversation with Laban and with the rest of the family, there were some words there that weren't exactly necessarily the same as when they were spoken the first time, and words were added and what have you, and people could say, well, doesn't the Bible contradict itself or whatever? And this is again an example where inferences can be used and where logic and reason can be used. For example, like even in normal conversation, people aren't always going to repeat words the way that they were given the first time, or people are going to paraphrase things even when they think they were quoting things, or people are going to add things that weren't necessarily added the first time. And so obviously the Bible was written in a way that we can understand, and God knew that, and that's why he even had the events happen, like, lo and behold, normal events. And that's where you need to use inference and reason and logic. And I mean the same thing when you're, you know, and there's an example where I'm quote-unquote imposing, saying that, oh, that things, you know, were normally human, and oh, that's where I'm making inferences on a historical record, on a historical document, on something that happened millennia ago. And the same thing with my research paper, you know, I'm hypothesizing, I'm theorizing, I'm doing this and that and this and that. And again, back to the history paper, and they said, oh, you can't impose yourself on the historical documents or whatever. Well, then why use reason? Why use logic? Why use inferences? Why have any of these things if we're not going to be able to use them? And actually, because oftentimes the truth was obscured, and in my own family, in my case, it was obscured, and I might get into trouble for quote-unquote imposing things, but then again, why use reason and logic? And, you know, and even if you go to Family Search or Ancestry, and I read this before, you know, one of the tips was, well, when you look at the records, you got to consider certain things. Like, for example, they may have even been lying on the records. Well, and that's, you know, that's true. They may have been lying on the records. And I could give you a clear example of where lies were done. And, for example, if we go to great-great-granddad's naturalization record, and since I'm not really using him for the paper that I'm doing, the creative paper, although he is an example of this because he was, and I put this in the creative paper, he was very well aware of what was going on in Spain and Portugal, and there was a lot of, because later he became a crypto Jew, obviously, and, you know, because and I mean, even the fact that he named great-granddad when great-granddad was baptized because he had to convert and all that, they were very they were very well aware of the events that were going on in Spain and Portugal like centuries ago. And I don't need to go back in time to see that. I don't need to look at a historical record to see that. All I gotta do is look up Wikipedia and see St. Anthony Claret. All I gotta do is look back at Great Uncle Tony's email and see where they were not talking about a writing relationship. All I gotta do, for example, is go, well, let me pull up great-great-granddad's naturalization record, and let me also pull up Dad's DNA results, and I shared the map because it's really important, and people are saying, oh, well, you were just lying, or you have no proof that we're Jewish, or, well, you know what? The more that Ancestry corrects itself, the more we do have proof. And if I go to show all regions, they came up with, of course they came up with Europe East, but again, remember, this is autosomal DNA too, and they still include things in Eastern Europe they should not be including, like the Balkans, for example. Sorry, but given that I was handed the whole spiel that we were Eastern European for a long time, I can tell you that Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe are not the same thing. And not only that, but really, okay, this is Eastern Europe in a nutshell. So let's go here, alright? This is Eastern Europe, and then of course the rest of it is Southeastern Europe. This is Eastern Europe in a nutshell. Okay? So, Poland, Lithuania, what's the other one? Latvia, Estonia, Belarus, Moldova, Ukraine, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Czech Republic. Oh, Lithuania, I might have missed that. And then I guess you could count Russia as well. But otherwise, you know what? Just leave Southeastern Europe out of Eastern Europe. Because, okay, both of them are in the east of Europe, but Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe are so different from each other. It's kind of like Maryland and Pennsylvania. Sure, on the Atlantic coast, both in the United States, way different. So, bad example, but I mean too, you know, so Ancestry still has problems even in terms of how they define Eastern Europe. And also, for what they did trace, though, they did trace Western Europe in our autosomal DNA. And it was kind of funny because my cousin Kevin did say that he got hits for Germany, and if I click Europe West, let me see if they put Denmark. And okay, this is being a pain in the butt to me right now. Let's see, so I clicked on, because I got to click on the actual thing as opposed to the thing on the map itself. And okay, they do include Denmark in Europe West, and he did say that he got hits for, God help me, Denmark and Germany, but also though we found Vascos in Finland, not in Denmark, and that's where he might be getting the hits from. And also, we picked a lot of names that weren't exactly Slavic in nature, if you'll notice too. Even one of our relatives, as I noted, was named Halva. So, we were pretty well aware of Western European stuff and Iberian stuff and Middle Eastern happenings. That's a better word than stuff, I think. We were well aware of, because I mean, even if, and I was complaining about this on Twitter last night, because they still won't correct this part. If you go to the quote-unquote Caucasus, what do they include in the Caucasus? They say Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, also found in Bulgaria, Jordan, Greece, Italy, Kuwait, Palestine, Romania, Turkmenistan. Well, the quote-unquote Caucasus, there are obviously some things they need to take out there too. And so, while Ancestry still does need to correct stuff, at least they're proving that, probably much to their chagrin, because they call part of Israel Palestine, they are proving that we're Jewish, and I'm Jewish, that Dad did inherit some Jewish autosomal DNA, and that, lo and behold, by the way, my eye itches, you gotta forgive me on that, but they are proving that we're Jewish, and, you know, so it's like, well, you gotta have this and this and this, you gotta have all this concrete evidence, and isn't circumstantial evidence enough? And it's like, again, circumstantial evidence should be enough, because we were given reason and logic and everything else, and the way that they go sometimes, you would need to go back in time to see all of the events. Even, for example, a lot of people would deny that, even with all the evidence that we have of, for example, 9-branched menorahs, even with all the evidence that we have, like where it's recorded in the New Testament that Hanukkah was celebrated, even with thousands and thousands and thousands of years with people celebrating Hanukkah, we would need to go back in time to see that Hanukkah really happened, that the Maccabees really existed. Apparently, archaeological evidence will no longer be enough. Apparently, records will no longer be enough. Apparently, and I think that's part of the thing that's really, that's what's ironic too, is that I'm going to kind of use one of my characters in my creative paper to make that point, because what's funny too is that, well, not funny, but part of what I'm going to do for the creative paper is I'm gonna have, like, because some of the stuff that I was reading that pertains to my creative paper comes from periods later than the period that I'm focusing on. So what I'm going to do is have a character that's like a prophet say some of this stuff, and of course I'm going to footnote and cite it because I got to do all that stuff. And, or either that, or I'll just say, oh, it comes from this pages, this pages, this pages, because that's what one of my sources did. Well, he did all the stuff, and then he quoted it, and then he later did a whole bibliography at the end, and then I'll just probably footnote and say, oh, this comes from this page, and this page, and this page. And I mean, I have no reason to lie anyway, and again, it all comes down to, we are in such a place in time and in society where skepticism is so high on things that we need to go back in time to see that things happened. Even like I gave the example of Hanukkah, eventually people are not going to believe that the Maccabees really did anything. You're going to have to go back in time and see that Hanukkah really happened, that the Maccabees really took back Jerusalem, that what was recorded in the New Testament was actually that, hey, Hanukkah was really celebrated in the time of Jesus. And just every time I get to thinking about this, oy vey es mir, if there's one thing that I've learned in my years at HCC and Notre Dame and UMBC and just doing all the stuff that I've done, and just even in the family research, people are so skeptical. And well, it's a kind of a paradox too, because on one hand, it's like people are selective, because it's like, it's just amazing. It's like, we're skeptical about what we want to be skeptical about if it doesn't fit our agenda, and we're willing to believe anything that fits our agenda, that fits our expectations, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And I think back to the book of Romans too, where it says, lo and behold, because I mean, it's like, the more that I think about this and the more that I talk about this, and even we were learning, like, about Anselm and Abelard, and people don't think that I pay attention in class and stuff, but lo and behold, I do pay attention in class. It talks about, you know, it talks about, for example, in the book of Romans, well, and Anselm and Abelard talked about how reason and faith are, well, Abelard, forget Abelard, because Abelard really was, for lack of a better term, a heretic. And look, let's focus on Anselm, because he really did love the Lord. He was very serious about, based on the evidence that we have, and based on what you can pick up from the evidence, unless, of course, I need to transport you back in time to prove, and unless I need to transport you back in time to show you that I was sitting in that class. Anyway, yes, it was a joke, people, because I know that some people are going to be skeptical and say, well, then transport me back in time and show me that you were paying attention to class. And anyway, so, but it says here, you know, it talks about faith leading to reason, and this could apply to where, because we're so faithless, we're not using the gifts of reason and logic that God gave us, and we need evidence and evidence and evidence for everything, and we even need to go too far as going back in time. And it says, where is it? Okay. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify Him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things. And that's Romans 1:21 to 23, and then going down to 28, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full many murder and strife. It just proves, people, we're living in the end of times. And I gotta go.